I'm John Bowden. As most of you have heard, we've lost one of the greatest teen idols, one of my personal favorites, and a man that kind of made a little difference in all my interview career. Ended up being one of the nicest men I've ever interviewed in my life. His autobiography, he sent it to me, autographed, personalized, was amazingly transparent, very honest. Bobby Rydell passed away. He was 79 years old. He died today. I'd be remiss before we get into this interview. This is a nice long interview we did with Bobby a few years ago. A fun interview where we talk about Michael Buble and a sort of a mean-spirited thing that Freddie Cannon did to him, Paul Anka, the Beatles, playing the drums, growing up with Frankie Avalon. And this is someone who had a lot of hits. These are just the ones around top 10, but Kissin' Time reached number 11. This was 1959. We Got Love at number 6. Wildwood, his signature song, or one of the two, Volare being the other one, reached number 2. Swing in School, a number 5 hit. Volare was number 4. And his last top 10 was Forget Him. And then the Beatles came in and things changed a little bit. But we talk about the Beatles in this interview, him meeting the Beatles, talks about Justin Bieber and how we can relate to Justin Bieber. He and Michael Buble both recorded Sway. He, of course, a long time before, and how we wanted to work with Michael Buble and, tipped his hat to him an awful lot, carrying the torch forward. Here's our nice long interview with the great, and we miss you, Bobby Rydell.
Bobby, reading your book, all of a sudden, and you were really good at this with the book of bringing me to a place in an era that I hadn't been to, but I felt like I was walking around with you. I felt like I was just walking behind you and experiencing this, which is what a good biography should do. And I know you had a chance to move away and you didn't, but that was just part of your fabric being in that city, huh?
Well, I guess so, John, and I think that's the way the book came out. I wanted to be very honest, very sincere, and that's the kind of person that I am. And I thank you for saying what you just said. You felt like you were walking behind me, because that's the way I wanted the book to come out. And I'm very, very pleased with the book. Alan Slutsky, who was my co-writer, I think he did a wonderful job. Thank you for the compliment, and I appreciate it.
I talk to a lot of authors, and I like talking to authors because they're already, you have just gone through this reflective mood. I mean, going through, what you did with Camille and everything of being a teen idol and the drinking. Appreciated your honesty of both that in the book, but what was your mindset going into first deciding to write a book?
Well, you know what? My wife, this was quite a while ago. She said, you should write a book about your career. And, I gave it some thought, and I said, well, maybe you're right, hon. Let me think about it. But I guess it all started, John, when, after a show, you hang around with people, you have a couple of drinks, you talk, and everybody that I would, hang around with and talk to, they say, Bobby, you have such wonderful stories. Why don't you write a book about yourself? Well, I was like 20, 21 years old at the time. I said, who wants to read a story about a 21-year-old? I haven't even lived my life yet. So now at the ripe old age of 76, a couple of years ago, I decided to sit down and, write an autobiography from 3 years old up until today. And once again, like I said, in the book, I just wanted to be very, sincere, very honest and straightforward.
You mentioned Justin Bieber once in your book, and I can appreciate the fact that anyone who's gone through it, and you've really gone through it. I mean, you've fully lived that kind of life at that level. But are you surprised sometimes that newer artists don't die at like 21? Because Justin Bieber misstepped and he had a lot of problems, but he seems to have gotten back up again. But how do you feel as a guy who's completely gone through this full in life, looking at young artists going through sometimes their pitfalls?
Well, the only guy that I can really think of, like you just mentioned, was, Justin Bieber. And, I said, my God, things happen so quick, at a very, very early age, 14, 15 years old. And he really didn't have any guidance. And, all of a sudden overnight, you become a multimillionaire. And, I don't know how you can handle that at that kind of an age. I more or less, lived through that, because at a very early age, my father used to take me around to nightclubs at like 8, 9 years old. And basically that was like my kind of vaudeville. So when things started happening for me, I kind of like already had some kind of an interest, some kind of a feel of what the business is like and how it could be. And, you know, I was very, very lucky, you know, to have a great dad to see in me if I had any talent whatsoever. He was the one who saw it, and he guided me, you know, when I was very, very young. So, you know, it didn't happen overnight for me, you know. I went around, I played with drums with different groups and so on and so forth. And I met my first manager when I was sitting in playing drums with Frankie Avalon. And he said he wanted to manage me. I was like 14 years old at the time. I said, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Please talk to my father. So, you know, as things progress through the years, you kind of understand and get a feeling of, you know, what the business could be. And I was very lucky in that aspect of my life, where Justin Bieber, overnight, you know, boom, you know, and it's so hard to handle. My God.
My takeaway from the book, there's a few, but a big thing is, Bobby, your father was a superstar.
He actually was. Yes, he was, John. He was my hero, my champion, a man that I miss so much today. I loved him dearly. And like I said earlier, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be in this business today. But he's the one who saw some kind of talent in me and pursued. And I consider myself very lucky to have a father like that, who was really, really concerned and a loving man. And like, once again, he was my hero, my champion. He's a very dear friend of mine. God rest his soul, was Buddy Rich, one of the greatest drummers on this planet. And we became really good friends. And matter of fact, one night when he was playing in California, I was sitting in the audience. I was doing the Milton Berle show at the time. And he introduced me. He said, ladies and gentlemen, a very dear friend of mine who's a very fine singer, but also a very, very good drummer. And he called me up to play. And I knew his charts backwards. And he said, Bobby, what do you want to play? And I'm left-handed, so I had to, move his drums all over the place being left-handed. So he says, what do you want to play? I said, basically blues. He said, you want me to count it? I said, no, I'll count it. And I counted the big band, the big band in, 4 trumpets, 4 bones, 5 saxophones, piano, bass, drums, guitar. And I played the chart like I knew it backwards because I was in there every night. And Buddy was just astounded. I wasn't playing Buddy Rich. I was playing Bobby Rydell, but I was making all of the poops and pops, that the band was playing. And he was very, very impressed, to the point where, Buddy couldn't read a quarter note, a half note, a 16th note. He just had a fantastic photographic memory. And he just threw up a Louis Bellson chart that the tempo was ridiculous. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 2, and it had 1, 2, 3, 4 bar breaks in between what the band was playing. Needless to say, make a long story short, after about 3 bars, I dropped the sticks because I just couldn't make the time. And then Buddy just sat there and he started laughing. But once again, to be able to, know those people and work with great, great musicians.
Who is do you think, the best musician you've ever worked with or even seen live?
Well, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of great musicians, being like on the Perry Como show, on the Red Skelton show, on the Jack Benny show, doing live concerts, in Vegas, who had, great musicians, Atlantic City, New Jersey, which is only about 70 miles from my house. They have some fine players. And I consider myself more of a musician than I do a vocalist. My father took me to see Benny Goodman when I was 5 years old. I didn't know who the hell Benny Goodman was, but my father wanted to introduce me to big band music. And he took me to see the band, and I kind of liked the band at 5 years old, but there was one guy. And I said, I don't know who he is, Daddy, but I want to be him. And that was Gene Krupa. He was playing drums for Benny Goodman, and I've been playing drums ever since then. So, I like I said earlier, I consider myself very lucky to work with some great, great players. A very dear friend of mine, God rest his soul, was Buddy Rich. one of the greatest drummers on this planet. And we became really good friends. And matter of fact, one night when he was playing in California, I was sitting in the audience. I was doing the Milton Berle show at the time. And he introduced me. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, a very dear friend of mine who's a very fine singer, but also a very, very good drummer." And he called me up to play. And I knew his charts backwards. And he said, "Bobby, what do you want to play?" And I'm left-handed, so I had to, move his drums all over the place being left-handed. So he says, "What do you want to play?" I said, "Basically blues." He said, "You want me to count it?" I said, "No, I'll count it." And I counted the big band, the big band in, 4 trumpets, 4 bones, 5 saxophones, piano, bass, drums, guitar. And I played the chart like I knew it backwards because I was in there every night. And Buddy was just astounded. I wasn't playing Buddy Rich. I was playing Bobby Rydell, but I was making all of the poops and pops, that the band was playing. And he was very, very impressed. To the point where, Buddy couldn't read a quarter note, a half note, a 16th note. He just had a fantastic photographic memory. And he just threw up a Louis Bellson chart that the tempo was ridiculous. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 2, and it had 1, 2, 3, 4 bar breaks in between what the band was playing. Needless to say, make a long story short, after about 3 bars, I dropped the sticks because I just couldn't make the time. And then Buddy just sat there and he started laughing. But once again, to be able to, know those people and work with great, great musicians.
Well, when you talk about Frankie Avalon, that is a relationship that's an amazingly long relationship where you guys were coming up around the same time to the point where you were doing with Fabian the trio stuff. Was there ever friendly competition between you two?
Never. We all grew up together in South Philadelphia. I lived on 11th Street, the 2400 block. Fabian lived on 11th Street, the 2500 block. And Frankie lived around the corner on 9th Street. And Frankie and I've known Frankie since I was 10 years old. Frankie played trumpet. I played drums, did some invitations, sang some songs. And we would go around to different, veterans hospitals and USOs, and, they're playing a band, so on and so forth. So, no, there was, Frankie has a great line when we do the show. He says, "Look at us, us 3 guys, born and raised in South Philadelphia. We used to hang out on the street corner together, and now we're hanging out on stage together." And how true. I mean, the camaraderie between Frankie, Fabe, and myself is absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, you know what? That almost brought a tear to my eye because long-term friendships, from my generation, maybe not as much for yours. I'm not sure. I didn't live there, but are rare. And I'm always interested in people who have. It says a lot about someone if you can have someone in your life for that long.
Well, that's very true. Matter of fact, back in 2012 is when I found out that I was going to get a new liver and a new kidney. I was getting a transplant. And the first person I called was Frankie. I said, "Frank, I'm going to the hospital. I'm going to have surgery. I'm getting a new liver and new kidney." He immediately went out. He said, "Bobby, as soon as you hung up, I went to church. I prayed for you."
I love hearing about your dad had a settlement and you bought that Black Oyster Pearl Ludwig set.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. My first set of drums, it came from a pawn shop, and it was called Revere drums. Not the greatest drums in the world, but at least they were a drum set, and I could bang around on them. And my father worked for a place called the Electronite Carbon Company. He was a punch press guy, and he lost part of his middle finger. And from that, he got a bonus, like $3,000 or something, which was back then, extraordinary money. But he had the money. He knew how much I wanted, a real good set of drums. And we went to a place called 8th Street Music Sales, and I see up there a set of William F. Ludwig, WFL, Black Oyster Pearl. I said, "Wow, Dad." I said, "I like that." And to this day, I think I still have the receipt of the drums, and I think it was something like $500. You couldn't touch that set today for $3,000. Matter of fact, that was Ringo's first set. WFL, William F. Ludwig, Black Oyster Pearl. And every time I used to see him, I used to laugh, and I went, I had those drums before you, man, when I was like 15 years old.
Well, that's a good segue. The fact that you were on that bus that time, the bus was stopped, and I guess you thought it was Brian Epstein who stopped the bus, and all of a sudden, it was the Beatles.
Yeah, I was touring there. Matter of fact, Ann-Margret and I were there for the premiere of the command performance Bye Bye Birdie for the royal family. While there, I met Tony Hatch, who wrote a song for me called Forget Him, which was my third million seller. And then I toured with a young lady by the name of Helen Shapiro, really, really fine female singer in the UK. And we're traveling on a bus, and it's like, 10, 11 o'clock at night in the middle of the UK. And there's a car in front of us. And Helen says to me, Bobby, where's the Beatles? I said, I'm looking around the bus for cockroaches. I don't know what the hell she was talking about. Anyway, the bus stopped, the car stopped, the four guys got on. You know, they knew me. This was 1963. And we shook hands, yada, 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 and they went their way. And I figured, well, it was just a band. You know, they're gigging, they're going to a club, doing this, that, the other thing. Now it's 1964. I'm home. I'm watching the Ed Sullivan Show on TV. All of a sudden, Ed introduces the Beatles. And I looked at them. I went, oh, my God, I met those guys. This was before they became,
That's uncanny.
The Beatles. Really, it is, yeah. And I could kick myself in my rear because what a great picture that would have been on the bus with those four guys in the middle of the UK at night.
But you got something, Bobby, I think you got something better when Paul McCartney in their special, well, when he said that he credited you for the Yeah, right?
That's basically what I understand, and I always thought it was like a song like We Got Love or Swingin' School with the Yeah, Yeah, Yeahs. But from what I understand, when I recorded Forget Him if he doesn't love you, and all of a sudden, Lennon and McCartney wrote She Loves You, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I believe he got it from the recording of Forget Him, where I'm, talking to my girl about, forget that guy. I'm the one who really loves you, and the Beatles, they recorded She Loves You. Yeah, I was driving to New York City with my manager. We're on the New Jersey Turnpike, and we get into the area where we can hear WABC radio. And I believe it was Bruce Morrow. And all of a sudden he says, here's a new kid that's out. His name is Bobby Rydell, and we'd like to play his first record for you. We think it's great. Here's Bobby Rydell and Kissin' Time. And it blew my mind. It's the first time I heard myself on the radio. And it was fantastic. It was great. What a wonderful
No one forgets that moment, right? No one. It's impossible. What about American Bandstand, for instance? Do you remember that moment when you were first on Dick Clark's American Bandstand?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a story about Dick Clark. I recorded for Cameo, Bernie Lowe, who was the president of the label. And I had 3 songs for a Cameo. And, when we recorded it and we'd have an acetate and dub, Bernie would take the songs to Dick, to play them. And Dick turned down my first 3 songs. He just turned them down. He said, no, that's not going to make it. And then finally we recorded Kissin' Time, and Bernie Lowe took the acetate, the dub, to Dick Clark. He put the needle down on the record, and he said, that's a hit. And from there I went on to the show, performed Kissin' Time, and of course back then, the show from 3:30 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon went cross country. Every kid who was watching American Bandstand figures, well, if Dick Clark is playing it, it must be a good record. We got to go out and buy it. And, Dick was very instrumental, not only in my career, but a lot of people in the business, and he was a wonderful man, really a great man, a gentleman. And, I'm happy that I had a lot of years with him, and I miss him. He was a great man.
Yeah, I'm studying the music after the war, after 45, especially going into the 50s, and you were a teen, and really starting out there. I mean, that was it's almost, if I had to explain that, and again, I wasn't there, I was born in 60, that world was, it was a complete different vibe, wasn't it, than it is today?
Oh, my God. Are you kidding, John? I mean, it was so wonderful, to grow up, in the early 40s and then into the 50s. It was just one of the greatest times, not only in my life, but I think in a lot of people's life who are now my age, in the 70s, in the 80s, so on and so forth. Because everything was just wonderful back then, you know. Everybody got along. You could go to sleep and leave your front door and your back door open without any problems of anybody coming in, hitting you over the head, killing you. You know, it was just a great time. We made up our games. We didn't have enough money to buy a bat, a ball, a glove, a football, so on and so forth. So we made up our games. And, you know, unfortunately today, you know, you don't see any kids out on the street, you know, playing some kind of ball, some kind of basketball, baseball, football. They're all in their houses. They're all on computers. They're all on phones, you know, and so on and so forth. And, you know, they're missing out on so much that life can give you. You know, it's unbelievable. So, you know, yeah, it was just a wonderful, wonderful era. And unfortunately, it'll never come back again, but it's always great to remember. And that's what, you know, I think our music does. You know, the music back then that people, you know, loved, you know, me and Avalon and Fabian and Paul Anka, the Everly Brothers, Elvis Presley, Fats Domino, so on and so forth, and you keep on going. And they reflect about, you know, how great everything was back then, how pure, how innocent, how simple. And that's what our music means. It was just wonderful, wonderful.
When you were working on Dick Clark's Caravan of Stars in '59 and Freddie Cannon Never Woke You Up, there are things like that that made me stop, and I had to reread it. I'm going, what does he mean you looked so comfortable? You had to be there or else you missed a bus. And it was Paul Anka who saved your butt, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Freddie Cannon and I were on the very first Dick Clark Caravan of Stars. We weren't making a heck of a lot of money. We were on the bus, you know. So Freddie and I roomed together. And we had a man by the name of Charlie Carpenter who was strict. He said the bus was going to be 8 for 8:30. So you had to be on the bus because if you weren't, the bus was leaving without you. So we're going to bed, and I said to Freddie, I said, Fred, whoever wakes up first, don't forget to wake up the other guy. So yada, 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 we go to sleep. I wake up, it's 9:30 in the morning, and there's no Freddie. Now, I don't know where the next gig is or how the hell I'm going to get to the gig. And I walked down into the lobby of the hotel, and there's Paul Anka. He said, Bobby, I thought you were supposed to be on the bus. I said, yeah, I don't know what happened. Freddie didn't wake me. Anyway, we either flew or he drove, whatever it was, you know, to the next gig. Now, we're at the next gig, and I see Freddie. I said, Freddie, what the hell's the matter with you? Didn't I say whoever wakes up first, wake up the other guy? And he just said, well, you look so nice sleeping there, I didn't want to bother you. I could have killed him.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Tell me about Wild One. Again, that is a song, Bobby, that made me, when I first heard it quite a few years ago, I stopped in my tracks and I went, oh, my God. I mean, it's the way you sing it. It's the band. It's the acoustics of it's the way your voice is mic'd. What's the story with it being plugged through the bathroom or the...
Oh, that, yeah. The studio today is now called Sigma Sound. Years ago, I can't remember his last name. His first name was Amo, and the studio was called Reco Art. And for some reason or another, that studio just had a phenomenal sound, a great, great sound. And as far as using, you know, echo, Amo would put a microphone in the hallway and then feed what came bouncing off the walls, came down into the studio. And that more or less became the echo on everybody's record we recorded for Cameo. And it was a great sounding studio. And, it's almost like a Motown thing. Like when a needle drops down, you know it's a Motown record. And that was the same thing with Cameo, which later became Cameo Parkway. When the needle dropped down on the record, you knew it was a Cameo record because of the sound, and that sound was because of the studio, Reco Art.
I found it heartbreaking when I read about A World Without Love with, the Peter and Gordon song, when you basically had recorded it, and I know they were lagging on it a little bit. I mean, that easily could have been a number one hit for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, my manager, Frank, and I, once again, were driving to New York, and we hear, once again, Bruce Morrow. Here's a couple of guys from the UK coming out with a brand new record. Their names are Peter and Gordon. Here they are with World Without Love. And Frankie Day and I look at one another. We said, my God, we already recorded that. It was in the can. That was going to be my next release. So just on principle, they had like a 2-3 week jump on me, but we put the record out anyway, just on principle. And I charted, but not as big as Peter and Gordon. And I remember Paul Schaefer, on the Letterman show, he said, there's a recording by Peter and Gordon, also by Bobby Rydell. And Peter and Gordon's record went something like this. I don't care what they say, I won't stay in a world without love. He says, but here's Bobby Rydell's World Without Love. I don't care what they say. And it was funny as hell. And, it was a good record for Pete and Gordon, but I must say my record was much better.
Agreed. When the Beatles came in, and as you put it, everyone wanted to hear someone from the UK, from Britain. And it's amazing how I think a younger generation doesn't realize how much that really impacted the landscape of radio.
Well, not only me, but it affected a lot of the artists because, all of the disc jockeys across the country, just started playing British music. And, it hurt, the American recording industry at the time. But, in this business, you have your hills, your valleys, your peaks, your highs, your lows, and you keep on doing what you're doing, because you love the business and, things turn around after a certain amount of time. And I think back then, after a certain amount of time, the jockey said, hey, we got to get back to playing, American music. And, around that time, really after 64, more or less my recording career was over, and I just, kept on doing live appearances. But once again, yeah, it did hurt to a certain degree, but you just keep on working.
I find it heartbreaking when I read about A World Without Love with, the Peter and Gordon song, when you basically had recorded it, and I know they were lagging on it a little bit. I mean, that easily could have been a #1 hit for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, my manager, Frank, and I, once again, were driving to New York, and we hear, once again, Bruce Morrow. Here's a couple of guys from the UK coming out with a brand new record. Their names are Peter and Gordon. Here they are with World Without Love. And Frankie Day and I look at one another. We said, my God, we already recorded that. It was in the can. That was going to be my next release. So just on principle, they had like a 2-3 week jump on me, but we put the record out anyway, just on principle. And I charted, but not as big as Peter and Gordon. And I remember Paul Schaefer, on the Letterman show, he said, there's a recording by Peter and Gordon, also by Bobby Rydell. And Peter and Gordon's record went something like this. I don't care what they say, I won't stay in a world without love. He says, but here's Bobby Rydell's World Without Love. I don't care what they say. And it was funny as hell. And, it was a good record for Pete and Gordon, but I must say my record was much better.
Agreed.
Specifically when I do, book appearances and Q&As and, sign autographs, take pictures, one of the questions is, Bobby, who do you listen to today? I said, I don't listen to anybody because I don't understand anybody. I listen to sports talk radio. I listen to 50s on 5, 60s on 6, and seriously Sinatra, But I said, there's one guy out there that I truly admire and adore, and his name is Michael Buble. And like you just mentioned, his first record that introduced him to the public was Sway. And and I had the record, like in 1960. And, I said to my manager, I said, I'd love to do something with Buble. I think it would be marvelous if we did Sway together. And of course, Michael's going through hard times right now, with his child. And hopefully, his child is going to be okay. And he, fights this battle with this terrible cancer that the kid has. And possibly, maybe in the future, at any given moment, maybe Buble and I could get together and do Sway together.
But yeah, he's plugged into something. I don't know. For this generation, it's hard to believe that he can be plugged into that vibe so effortlessly. I know he was listening to all the greats thanks to his grandfather growing up. But yeah, he's got something, man.
Oh, absolutely. Like you said, he listened to, the different people that his grandfather loved, and that's what happened to me with my dad. That's why my dad wanted to introduce me to big band music, Benny Goodman, Tex Beneke, Artie Shaw, Tommy Dorsey, so on and so forth. the songs from the American Songbook, you know, which I adore. I adore all of those songs. And I'm sure Buble was the same way because of his grandfather.
Ann-Margret. I mean, really, I almost want to bow in front of you and say, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy. I always looked at Ann-Margret, even from my generation, as probably one of the most beautiful women that has ever walked this earth. Talent beyond compare. How far back did you go? Was it the movie that introduced you to?
Oh, absolutely. Matter of fact, Ann and I screen tested together for George Sidney, who was the director. And, you know, we read a couple of lines from the script. You know, that's what they do on a screen test. You read lines from the script, talk a little bit about yourself. They want to see what kind of personality you have, how you come across on camera. And then we sang a little piece of one boy, one girl, one special girl, so on and so forth. And George Sidney said, thank you ever so much. He said, we'll be in touch. Well, 2 weeks later, my manager called. He said, you landed the part of Hugo Peabody in Bye Bye Birdie. Wow, you know, now, and I was 20, she was 21 at the time. And we got along absolutely just great. I mean, she's such a wonderful lady. Matter of fact, she has a blurb in my book. And I called her. I have her cell. She has my cell. I called her and I said, Ann, would you write a little bit of a blurb? You know, I'll send you the book. You read it and just, you know, write a blurb. And she says, oh, I'll write the meanest things, you know. And she was being, you know, facetious and so, you know. But, I mean, we talk every couple of months, you know, just to say hello. And we've been friends since 1963. So the last time I talked to her was when, unfortunately, her husband, Roger Smith, passed away. And they were married for 50 some odd years, you know, and I said, Ann, I just want to say how sorry, my condolences. And she said, oh, Bobby, she said, thank you, but you know, you remember how sick he was. I said, yes, I do, Ann, and I'm sorry for your loss. But she's a great lady, and like you said earlier, she is one beautiful woman.
When I was reading about Camille, and you were so incredibly respectful, and you let us in on your first wife, Camille. You showed, first of all, to me, I was seeing constraint. I'm going, first of all, Camille seemed like she was comfortable in their skin, being in the background, because the management and the record company, they didn't, you're a teen idol. I know the rules. Everyone, even today, knows those rules. They don't want to see you in a relationship. Was that difficult, or did it just seem to work with Camille before you got married?
Well, I'm sure it was difficult for, you know, my first wife, Camille, God rest her soul, but you know, when she would be with me, it would either be, well, here's my cousin, here's a friend of the family, and she was always in the background, you know, and, you know, she was the one who actually, you know, raised the kids, you know, our two kids, Robert and Jennifer, because I was on the road, you know, paying for the groceries. But, you know, when I was home, you know, I always spent quality time, you know, with my wife and my two children. And I really miss her dearly. You know, we were married 35 years, and she passed away when she was just about 60 years old in the year 2003. And when she passed, that's what led me to alcohol, because there was nobody to talk to, nobody to laugh with, nobody to cry with, nobody to have love with, you know. And I missed her so much. And then I became very, very, you know, dependent with vodka. And, you know, vodka almost killed me. But I can't say enough about Camille. I mean, we, as they say, kept company. I was 15 years old. She was 15 years old. And we were together for 10 years, you know, as boyfriend and girlfriend, before we got married in 1968. And, you know, it was just a wonderful relationship. She had one of the greatest smiles that I've ever seen on anybody. And I used to have a conductor by the name of Rocky Valentine. And Rocky always called Camille Smiley. How you doing, Smiley? How is Smiley? Because that's the kind of person she was. She never had a bad word to say about anybody. And anybody who knew my wife, my first wife, fell in love with her. She was that, you know, that great of a person.
Were you on Frank Sinatra Jr.'s show when someone had said that yeah, Frank Sinatra Jr. really likes you, and he said, no. Frank Sinatra Jr. said, no, my dad really loves him. Wasn't that how it went?
I was very friendly. I was fairly friendly with Mr. Sinatra and Frank Jr. And we were doing a radio show here in Philadelphia. A guy by the name of Sid Mark, who played nothing but Sinatra. So Sid knows how much I love Sinatra. Sid respected my talent. And it was Frank Jr. and me on the radio. So after the show's done, I said, Junior, I said, by the way, I said, I want to thank you for what you said. He said, what was that, Bob? I said, well, you said that I'm one of the best singers around out of all of the guys today. He said, I didn't say that. I said, yes, you did. I heard, you know, from the grapevine. He said, no. My father said that. So, you know, I mean, it was nice that Junior, you know, said, you know, no, I didn't say that. But then he's talking about his old man who respected my talent, you know. Fantastic.
Why were you scared that first time you had a chance to meet Frank Sinatra?
I was well on my way at the time, but I was only 19 years old. And the first time I met Sinatra was at the Copacabana. He came in to see Joey Lewis, very fine comedian. Matter of fact, Sinatra did a movie, The Joker is Wild, about Joey Lewis's life. And I met Mr. Sinatra up in the lounge at the Copa. And the owner, Jules Rydell, because when Joey Lewis was done, he left the nightclub, and I went, oh, my God, you know, that's it. I'll never see this man again. All I wanted to do was shake his hand. So we go upstairs to the lounge, and Sinatra comes walking out through the kitchen doors. And I said to Jules Rydell, I called him Uncle Julie, all I want to do is his hand, Uncle Julie. That's all I want to do is shake his hand. He said, you want to meet Frank? I said, I'd love to. So he's sitting with Sammy Kahn, Jimmy Van Heusen, Richard Conte, and Joe DiMaggio. And Jules says, I want you to meet the kids. Sinatra stood up. He said, how you doing, Robert? Called me Robert. I said, fine, Mrs. Sinatra, how are you? He says, I'm wonderful. Would you care to join us? And I sat there like I was dumbfounded. I didn't say two words. And Sinatra turned to me. Now I'm 19 years old. He turns to me and he says, what do you drink, Robert? And I said, Coke. I figured if I would have said Scotch and water, I got smacked in the face. But I was very, very happy and very fortunate to be friends with Mr. Sinatra. There's a guy that the music industry really misses. Well, you know, Volare is my signature song now. It's my walk-on music. It's my bow music. And, of course, I do it in the show. But the guy who originally wrote and sang the song, who had a hit, was Domenico Modugno. And I've had the great opportunity of meeting Mr. Modugno in his villa in Rome. And we got great pictures with him. So, you know, he had recorded it, and then, God rest his soul, Mr. Dean Martin recorded it. And I had the good fortune of going into the studio and recording it. You know, it's a totally different version than Modugno's and Dean Martin. And it came out, and we loved it, and we put it out, and lo and behold, it became my second million seller. Wild One was the first, Forget Him was the third. So, you know, most of the people, you know, when I do my show, yeah, they love Sway, they love Forget Him, they love Wild One, but they really, really enjoy, you know, Volare. I get the whole, you know, after I sing the first verse, you know, I go through the first chorus, and so on and so forth. I get the audience to sing Volare, you know, so on and so forth. So, it was a great record. I think all of my songs, you know, Wild One, Sway, the Cha-Cha-Cha, Good Time Baby, so on and so forth, they were really happy songs, you know, nothing to really sit back and think about, you know. It was just happy music, you know, like they say, it had a good beat and you could dance to it. And, yeah, I think that most of my songs are happy songs. Yeah. Well, you know, like I said, John, I consider myself a musician first and a vocalist second, because I've had the opportunity, you know, to work with some of the best. And, you know, I am a musician. I started 5 years old playing drums, taking lessons, reading music, you know, yada, yada, yada. So, yeah, I mean, you know, that's the one. I remember one time, and this was a great, great honor. Don Rickles was a club in Atlantic City. And he's working with a lot of the guys that I know. They're from Atlantic City, marvelous musicians. And he introduces me, and the whole band applauded. That is an honor when it comes from musicians.
Yeah.
Oh, I absolutely gravitate, no matter who I go to see, I respect their talent, but, I want to hear what the band is playing, and of course, my eyes and my ears automatically go to the drum set, to see what this cat is playing.
Was your regiment loose when you were growing up as a teen, Bobby? Were you going, oh, I got to practice an hour a day? Because you seem like a busy kid. What was your regiment like as far as being a drummer?
Well, my first drum teacher was a man by the name of Sam D'Amico. And my father used to take me to his house. We'd go upstairs and, we'd go through different books, different drum books. Samuel Lano, bass bops, Rudy bops, Lawrence Stone, stick control, so on and so forth. The WFL Ludwig book. And at one time, I think I was, maybe 12 years old, 13. And at one point, Mr. D'Amico said, Bobby, I can't teach you anymore. I've taught you all I know. He says, if you want to go any further, you have to go to New York and study with a guy like Sam Milano. And I turned to Sam, I said, you know what, Sam? I'm done, reading and practicing on the drum pad. I said, all I want to do is play now, man. And, and that's, I for some reason or another, when I just picked up a pair of drumsticks, I just started playing. And I mean, I knew time. And it's one thing that I really respect about myself is that I have great time, which is totally, 100% most important to have great time. If you do a tempo and it starts with one particular tempo, it ends in that particular tempo. And I picked up a pair of sticks and played time. Dang, 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 dang. It just came so natural to me. And, that's why all of my conductors, through the years have been drummers. From the first time at the Copacabana, I had a kid by the name of Rydell, who was a marvelous player. And then, through the years, it changed drummers, but, I always, listened to the guy to see, what kind of time he played, how he can keep a tempo at its same pace. And that's why all of my conductors have been drummers. To this day, I have a kid by the name of David Kovnat. He's been with me for 40 years. And he studied from a guy who used to be my drummer, a kid by the name of Carl Matola. And when I needed a drummer, Carl played for me for about 8-10 years. And then he wanted to do his own thing, yada, yada, yada. So he said, Bobby, he said, I'm teaching a kid. I think he'd be great for you, man. He's a pretty good player. He reads well, so on and so forth. His name is David Kovnat. And, I went to hear him. He was playing with a local big band. And I enjoyed, what I heard. And I talked to him. I said, would you consider, working for me? And that was 40 years ago. And, he's still with me.
I think it's an accident that in Greece they called the high school Rydell High, considering the...
Yeah, everybody asked me that, John, and I said, I haven't a clue. It could have been Fabian High, Presley High, Everly High, Anka High, they picked me, they picked Rydell High, and, what an honor, it's fantastic. One of the greatest, a great movie, it's like Bye Bye Birdie. It's a classic.
I was 18 years old at the time, and you know what? When I heard that high school name, even at an 18-year-old, I knew you then. I thought you were the first guy I thought of, and I'm going, that's not an accident. Come on.
I don't know. I really don't know if it was an accident. I don't know why. Yeah, I do. I really wonder why. Because I was 2 weeks away from death. And the only reason that I'm here is because of Julia, who was, my angel. And not only did she save my life, but she saved 6 other people as well. And when I'm on stage, I talk about, how important it is to become an organ donor. Because it really is the gift of life. I mean, if it wasn't for Julia, who was only 21 years old at the time, lost her life, she saved my life and 6 other people as well. So, organ transplantation is so wonderful. I impress upon the people how important it is the next time they apply for their driver's license. I don't know about stage fright, but, from the early days when I was 7, 8 years old up until today, 76 years old, still nervous, before, I hit the boards, and then once I'm on stage and the lights are there and the band is cooking, then everything becomes second nature.
I hope you enjoyed that. We don't usually put really long interviews on this channel. It's usually on our other channel, Rock History Book, but I wanted as many people as possible to listen to this interview of Bobby Rydell, who, as I mentioned earlier, was one of the nicest people I've ever interviewed. A real generous man, a happy guy who had gone through his struggles but got the lessons from it and just loved performing and talking about the songs. So those 2 hours I had with Bobby, I'll always appreciate. May he rest in peace. He passed away at 79 today. I'm John Bowden. This is Rock History Music. Take care of yourself.